Hello children, let us continue with our ongoing lesson, improvement in food resources. Now, in the last class we had discussed about the major activities for improving crop yields, and those activities includes crop variety improvement, crop production improvement and crop protection management. Out of the three, we had discussed about the crop variety improvement. Now in this video we'll be talking about crop production improvement. Now in crop production management also we had discussed about the nutrient management, how the different nutrients are considered with the different varieties of crops. We had also discussed about what is manure, what are fertilizers and what is the difference between manure and fertilizers. Now let us continue with the next topic, and that is irrigation. Now, when we talk about irrigation, India is an agricultural country and most agriculture in India is rain fed. That means we have to depend on rain for agriculture. Now, this is a story long back. Nowadays, we have various technologies by which we can store rainwater, or we can have certain facilities through which we can use that water throughout the year. Okay, now let us see that part, that we cannot depend on rain for water as it's not fully reliable. Sometimes it may be a condition of drought where there would be no rain at all, and sometimes in the situation of flood there would be excess of water and that would damage the crops. So poor monsoon causes crop failure. Therefore, a proper irrigation system should be there which ensures timely and adequate water to crops. So, crops need adequate water, neither too much more nor less. So, this would lead to more yield. Now, when we talk about the irrigation systems, today we'll talk about some irrigation systems used in order to get a better yield of crops. The first one is building wells. Now, people in olden times used to construct wells, and where these wells are constructed, it is constructed in the region where enough groundwater is available. Now the groundwater is stored in the wells in order to get the water available throughout the year. Nowadays we see very less wells, and we talk about wells that they are present in villages only. But in the olden periods, every location, at every location there would be wells, because groundwater was available at many places. But nowadays that is not the case. Nowadays we see wells only in villages or in certain areas where groundwater is available. Okay, now these wells are of two types. One is the dug well and the another is the tube wells. Now let us see what are dug wells and tube wells. In the dug wells, dug means to dig, to dig well into the ground. So water is collected by bullock operated devices or by pumps, and this dug well method is cheap, because when animals are incorporated, means when they are used, then they will not take money, and that is the manual work. And so when manual work is done and when machines are not involved, then the method becomes cheap. So in many villages this method is used. Now let us see what are tube wells. Now it makes very deep underground water available for irrigation, and motor pumps are used to lift water. So it is a lifting water technique in which the water is lifted from the deep underground water which is available for irrigation. Now sometimes what happens is we need machines in order to lift this water. So this lifting technique, water lifting technique, may require high cost, and thus it is not used by most of the people. Many farmers use, if they have good amount of money, then they may use this system in order to get more water available for their crops. Okay, the other method is canals. What are canals? Now, man-made water channels originating from rivers or water, or you can say that reservoirs are constructed in order to get the water for irrigation, and they are specifically made to take water to various agricultural plots means to the fields. Here in the figure you can see the it is the satellite view of the canals that are made in order to make the water available to the fields. The second picture is of the river, which is the original source of water, and in the third picture you can see that how the man-made channels are made and the water is sent to different fields through these canals. Okay, one of the system is the river lift system. Now what is this river lift system? This system, water is directly taken from rivers through pumps. So this system can be used for irrigation in areas which are close to river. So water can be directly used. But the fields or the places which are not near to the river, then we cannot use that pumps in order to carry that water to long distances. So there the canal process only can be useful. But for the places which are near to the river, this system can work. Tanks. Now what are tanks? We have tanks at our home. So do farmers have in their fields. But what are these tanks? They are small storage reservoirs. What are reservoirs? Reservoirs are the constructions made in order to store the water, rainwater, and they are constructed. You might have seen near the Narmada that if you have visited the Sardar Sarovar Dam, then you might have seen how the dams are constructed, how the water is used and sent for irrigation purpose. If the conditions are good and if you have time in the near future, please visit it. It's a very good place to see, and you might be able to see how they have constructed it and how they make the water. Kevadia colony, I am talking about the Kevadia colony, and how the water is used for irrigation purpose. Okay, the another method is rainwater harvesting. You have learned about rainwater harvesting in your lower classes, but let's revise it. It is the accumulation of rainwater in tanks for later use. So once the rainwater comes, then you can store it underground with the help of the underground tanks. And what happens because of this? It prevents soil erosion. What is soil erosion? It is unwanted removal of the top layer of the soil with flowing water. So when there is excess rain, then what happens? The topmost fertile layer of the soil gets eroded due to the flowing of water. So you can see here on the roof there is a small strip of aluminium or iron, and when the rainwater falls on the roof, then with the help of the slope of the roof, the water gets collected in that small strip, and then through that it goes into the pipe, and that pipe leads into the tank that is present underground, and the water gets collected there. So it is a very good technique, and so only in olden time people used to have such roofs. Nowadays we have flats and tenements, and when we uh, don't have the system of getting the rainwater dripping downside, so it gets accumulated in our terraces, and then we have to clean it over time. People in the olden times were very intelligent. They used to build houses with mud, and the floor was made up of that cow dung, and so that did not bring diseases. It used to keep the people safe from diseases, and the people used to remain healthy. We talk about the next technique or the next activity, that is crop patterns. Different patterns are used to maximize the production from crop field. Now if you want a good yield, then we may incorporate different methods or patterns of crops in order to get more yield. So there are three methods for this crop patterns. The first one is mixed cropping, the second one is intercropping, and the third one is crop rotation. Now let us talk about all these three methods one by one. You can see in this figure that you can see lines, and these lines are different. The first one is the darker one, the second one is the lighter one. And in the second picture you can see the mustard seeds, and in the second one you can see the crop is something different. So this is the one field only, but you can see that in this pattern seeds of two or more crops are mixed and spread in fields, so both the crops grow together. Some of the examples are wheat and gram. You can grow wheat and gram together, wheat and mustard, and groundnut and sunflower. So what happens due to this, how the crops are chosen? Now when two crops are taken or when they are selected, then we must see that they should require similar environmental conditions like rain, temperature for their growth. Because if you have taken one crop which needs more water and the other which needs less water, then they cannot grow well and there might be problems. So they must require the same environmental conditions, and they should require different nutrients so that all nutrients of the soil are used. Now see, if they need the same nutrients, then what would happen? Then they would extract all the nutrients from the soil, and then it would be a problem. Now what is the advantage of mixed cropping? First one is low risk, that is risk, you don't have to take risk in that. Why? Because if one crop fails, other may still survive. अगर एक खराब हो गया तो दूसरे क्रॉप में से हमें पैसे, मीन्स फार्मर को पैसे मिल सकते हैं. सो इट इज़ beneficial to the farmer. The other technique is intercropping. What is intercropping? Now it is the advanced form of mixed cropping. In this technique, two or more crops are grown on the same field in a definite pattern. So few rows of one followed by few rows of other. So this is the technique. Some of the examples are soyabean plus maize. So soyabean and maize are grown together. Finger millet means bajra, and cowpea. Here you may not know what is it, but we grow it and it's not available here. Okay, so finger millet and cowpea, they are grown with intercropping. And in this figure you can see how moong and sugarcane are grown through the technique of intercropping. Now how these crops are chosen or how they are selected? They must require, as said before, similar environmental conditions like rain, temperature for growth. They should require different nutrients so that all nutrients of the soil are used. ऐसा ना हो कि एक को एक न्यूट्रिएंट चाहिए और दूसरे को दूसरा न्यूट्रिएंट चाहिए. Okay, they must need different nutrients. They both should not need the same nutrient. So what are the advantages of this crops or this technique? First is low risk, same as the mixed cropping, that if one crop fails others may still survive. And the second advantage is disease cannot spread from one row to other. रोज बनाई गई है इसीलिए डिस्टेंस है, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दैट द डिजीज, इफ वन क्रॉप इज डिजीज द अनदर विल नॉट गेट इट, and because of that what happens, the crops are flourished in a better way. Okay, the third technique is crop rotation. What is crop rotation? It is the policy of growing different crops one after another on the same field. एक एक के होने के बाद दूसरा तुरंत क्रॉप ग्रो करना, उसको कहते हैं क्रॉप रोटेशन. व्हेन यू आर having your sitting arrangement in the classroom, then you have rotation. Means the boy sitting on the first bench sits on the second sits on the third, and then when it's the turn of the last one, then he can come to the first row. So that is rotation, means moving. So crops also they have to rotate. How they rotate? As soon as the first one is over, then the second is sown. Okay, now if same crop is grown again and again on the same field, same nutrients are extracted from the soil again and again. So ये तो नहीं परवड़ेगा, it would not be proper. So what can be done? So we should choose different crops so that all nutrients of the soil are used. So in crop rotation it must be taken care that if you have taken one crop for the first time, and then the second crop that you sow, that must be a different one so that all nutrients can be used. Now as the different techniques discussed before, here also the crops are chosen taking into consideration the environmental conditions and the nutrients required by the crops. What are the advantages of this method? The first one is soil fertility is maintained. How the soil fertility is maintained? Because we are taking different crops, so all the nutrients are used, and the things that they require for their growth are acquired or taken, so the fertility is maintained. Less use of fertilizers, because you can see that because of the rows the microbial growth will not be there, and because of that the plants will not be affected and they will not be diseased, and because of that you need not spray more fertilizers for the growth of plants, and they'll grow in a better way, and we get a good yield or a high yield of crops because of this technique. We move on to the other activity and the last one, that is a crop protection improvement. So when the crop is in the field, it needs protection against weeds, insects, pests and other diseases. Of course, if we are growing something and if we want a good yield, then we'll keep it away from the diseases. So let us see the methods which are used to control these problems. The first one is pest control during growth. So we have to keep the pests away. And the second one is the storage of grains. Now, how to keep pest control? Now, before talking about pest control, let us talk what are pests. Pest is any destructive organism which can destroy or harm crops or products obtained from them. Locust, it is the one which is a dangerous one, and it really destroys the fields on a large scale. If that get into the crops, then it will spoil and ruin the whole field. So we must keep these pests away in order to have a good growth of plants and protect them from destruction. Now these pests are of many types. The first one is weeds. What are weeds? Weeds are unwanted plants in the cultivated field, and some of the examples are xanthium, parthenium, cyperinus and rotundus. Now these are not given in your textbook, but I am just giving some examples of weeds. You need not remember the examples, but you need to know how these weeds spoil the crops and what do they do. They compete with the desired crops for food, space and light. उन्हें भी ग्रो होना है तो वो भी जगह ले लेते हैं, वो भी न्यूट्रिशन ले लेते हैं फील्ड में से, और सनलाइट भी यूज़ कर लेते हैं. एंड सो व्हाट हैपेंस इज the plant which really needs the air, water and sunlight, that it would not get, and therefore desired crops get less nutrients and they are adversely affected and they will not grow well. The other pests are insects. Now insects can harm plants in many ways. They can cut roots, stems and leaves of plants. They can get into fruits, flowers and stems of plants and destroy them. And they can suck food and water from the plant bodies. So these are the ways by which these insects harm the plants, and they hinder the growth of plants. The other organisms are the pathogens. What are pathogens? They are any organisms that can produce diseases. Some of the examples of these pathogens are bacteria, virus and fungi. You can see the figure and you can come to know how the bacteria, virus and the fungi, they affect the plant and how they spoil the whole plant. So plants can get these organisms from soil, air or water. It can be from any source, and the diseases caused by this can spread in all crops on the field and destroy the entire cultivation. You can see how the crops are spoiled, and so we must take utmost care so that these pathogens do not affect the crops and keep them healthy. Okay, now there are various methods which are used to control the weeds, insects and pathogens, and these methods include, okay, now it's too much, and we'll talk about these methods in the next session. I want you to go through the slides and understand the different techniques by which the irrigation is done, how the patterns are used in order to get the good yield of crops, and then we'll discuss later on how we can control the weeds, insects and pathogens. I hope you have understood the different techniques, and if you still have any doubt you may feel free to ask me anytime. Have a good day. Thank you.